How does a quarterback who throws 2 turnovers, one an interception and the other a sloppy fumble, get praised more than a quarterback who throws touchdowns? That's not just a rhetorical question. It's what actually happened when ESPN analyst Dan Orlovsky claimed Dillon Gabriel looked better than Shadeur Sanders in their preseason debuts. Now, if you've been following football for more than 5 minutes, you already know that stat lines tell a story. And in this case, the story seems pretty clear. Shadeur Sanders, the rookie stepping into the NFL spotlight under the heavy shadow of his legendary father, Deion Coach Prime Sanders, was calm, composed, and efficient. He threw touchdowns. He moved the offense, and he looked the part of a quarterback ready to make the leap. Meanwhile, Dillon Gabriel had flashes of promise but also clear struggles. He threw an interception into traffic and coughed up the ball on a botched exchange. Under center. 2 costly mistakes, the kind of plays coaches and analysts usually highlight as red flags for rookies. And yet somehow, when the dust settled, one of the biggest voices at ESPN turned around and declared that Gabriel looked even better. Then Shedeur. Hold up. Better? How does that make sense? That's exactly what we're diving into today, because this wasn't just an ordinary hot take. It set off a firestorm. Analysts clashed on TV. Stephen A. Smith called the comments crazy. Fans online called it disrespectful. And it all raised a bigger question. Why do certain quarterbacks get criticized harder, while others seem to get excuses lined up before they even leave the field? This isn't just about Shadeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel. It's about perception, bias, and the way media narratives can completely flip the way we view a player's performance. Think about it. One quarterback puts points on the board, the other gives points away, and somehow the guy with turnovers walks away with more praise. That's not just odd, it's headline-making. And here's what makes it even spicier. Orlovsky didn't just say it once, he doubled down. Multiple platforms, multiple shows, repeating that Dillon Gabriel's performance was more impressive. Meanwhile, the tape, the stats, and the fan reactions were telling a very different story. So, in this breakdown, we're going to look at it from every angle. We'll start with Shadeur Sanders' actual performance and why it mattered so much. Then we'll dig into Dillon Gabriel's day, the highs, the lows, and the mistakes. We'll get into Orlovsky's reputation as the quarterback defender, Stephen A's explosive reaction, and even how fans and Browns insiders weighed in. And at the end, we'll circle back to the bigger question. Was this just one analyst protecting a rookie, or was it part of a larger pattern in how sports media covers different players? Buckle up, because this isn't just a football story, it's a media story. And it starts with 2 rookies, 2 very different stat lines, and one very controversial ESPN tape. When Shadeur Sanders stepped onto the field for his first taste of NFL preseason action, the pressure wasn't just high, it was immense. Not only is he the son of Deion Coach Prime Sanders, one of the most iconic names the game has ever seen, but he's also been under a microscope since the moment he transferred to Colorado and followed his father into the national spotlight. Every throw, every snap, every step on the field carries an extra layer of scrutiny. People want to know, is this kid just living off the Sanders name, or is he the real deal? And against all that pressure, Shedeur delivered. His stat line was crisp, 6 of 7 passes completed when blitzed for 62 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's efficiency, that's poise, and that's producing points when defenses are actively trying to rattle you. He added solid intermediate throws, hitting 4 of 5 for 63 yards and another score. And while the sample size was small, preseason games don't exactly give rookies hours to shine, the takeaway was clear. Shedeur didn't just look comfortable,
I am all
he
for
looked
head coaches
NFL
supporting
ready.
rookie quarterbacks and
Now let's flip it to Dillon Gabriel. Coming out of Oklahoma, Gabriel was known as a quick-release, spread-offense quarterback. He played in systems where he lined up up almost exclusively in shotgun, operating in wide-open passing attacks. The skill set was there. Good arm talent, mobility, confidence, but the question was how that style would translate into the NFL, where pro-style offenses demand more under-center snaps, more complex reads, and, above all else, ball security. Gabriel's debut showed flashes of that talent. He had some sharp completions, moved well at times in the pocket, and even hit a few tight window throws that made scouts nod. But alongside those flashes came the kind of mistakes coaches hate. He threw an interception on a poorly judged pass, forcing the ball into a crowded zone. And then there was the fumble, a botched exchange under center that screamed inexperience. In a league where protect the football is the #1 commandment for quarterbacks, those are not small errors. So let's lay this side by side. Shadeur Sanders, 2 touchdowns, efficient passing, sharp under pressure. Dillon Gabriel, 1 interception, 1 fumble, some good throws mixed in, but ultimately 2 turnovers and limited action. By almost any measure, the conclusion writes itself. Touchdowns are better than turnovers. Efficiency is better than giving the ball away. But that's not how it played out in the ESPN studio. Instead, Dan Orlovsky turned the conversation upside down, insisting that Gabriel actually looked more impressive. And that's why fans did a double take, because this wasn't just about 2 rookies, it was about how their stories were being told. Shadeur, who showed composure and put points on the board, was somehow cast in the shadow of Gabriel, who gave points away. The contrast was so stark that Stephen A. Smith, never one to bite his tongue, openly called the take crazy. This moment matters because it shows how quickly narratives can shift. A quarterback with clean stats can be downplayed, while another with glaring mistakes can get hyped up, all depending on which analyst is holding the mic. And in this case, the analyst was Orlovsky, a guy with a long track record of defending quarterbacks, no matter what the tape shows. But before we get to Orlovsky's role in all this, it's important to understand why his comments struck such a nerve. Because Shadeur Sanders wasn't just playing against defenders, he was playing against expectations, critics, and the ever-present comparisons to his father. His performance wasn't just about one preseason game, it was about answering the question, can Shedeur carry the Sanders name into the NFL? And the early signs said yes, which made it all the more confusing when Dillon Gabriel's mistake-filled debut somehow stole the spotlight. If you've watched Dan Orlovsky on ESPN over the years, you already know his reputation. He defends quarterbacks, not sometimes, not occasionally, pretty much all the time. In fact, if there's a silver lining to find in a quarterback's bad game, Orlovsky will find it. It's practically his brand. This is a guy who once went viral for saying interceptions aren't always the quarterback's fault. He's been known to break down film where a QB clearly threw the ball straight into the arms of a defender, only for Orlovsky to argue that the receiver ran the wrong route, or the protection broke down, or the coach didn't scheme it properly. That's just who he is. A quarterback apologist through and through. So when Dillon Gabriel walked off the field with an interception and a fumble on his stat line, nobody should have been surprised that Orlovsky rushed in to protect him. On the Pat McAfee show, he said Gabriel looked awesome. He praised Gabriel's ball placement, his ability to hit tight windows, and the fact that he operated under center, something he didn't do much in college. To Orlovsky, those small positives outweighed the turnovers. And here's where it gets interesting. Orlovsky didn't just stop at saying Gabriel had some good moments. He went further. He actually said Gabriel looked even better than Shadeur Sanders, who had just thrown 2 touchdowns in his own debut. That's not just defending a quarterback. That's flipping the narrative completely upside down. Why does he do it? Some of it comes from Orlovsky's own background. Remember, this is a guy who played quarterback himself in the NFL. He wasn't a star, he wasn't an MVP, but he was there. He knows how brutal the game can be for QBs, how every mistake gets magnified,
Cleveland between
and how
the
easy
two,
it is
and
for
the whole
fans and
world
media
sees
to
it,
label you
including
a
Dillon
bust
Gabriel, I think,
after one
because
bad
during
throw.
his start, after
So,
he was
in his
taken out for
mind,
Tyler Huntley,
part of his
Dillon
job as
Gabriel
an
had this
analyst
say
is to
about his
protect
game.
quarterbacks from what he sees as unfair criticism. And that's not always a bad
tell me
thing.
that doesn't sound
Sometimes
exactly
he's right.
like a shot at
Not
Shedeur.
every
There's
interception is a
entertainers and
disaster.
there's competitors.
Not every
to me,
misstep
that
should
sounds like
define
he's saying that he's
a
a
rookie.
competitor, while Shedeur
But the
is
problem
nothing but an
is,
entertainer.
Orlovsky
this
often
isn't
takes
the
it
first
too
time
far.
we heard someone
In this
talking
case,
about
excusing
Shedeur being
Gabriel's
more about
turnovers and
social
then
media
putting him
than his
ahead of
actual
Sanders
grind.
wasn't just
Y'all remember
generous.
how Cam
It
Ward
felt
was talking
biased.
trash to him when they
Fans
were
caught it
working out
immediately.
together before the
How can you
NFL
sit there,
draft?
watch one rookie throw 2 touchdowns and another cough up the ball twice, and then say the guy with turnovers was better? It's the kind of take that makes people roll their eyes and ask if ESPN is watching the same game as the rest of us. Even other analysts started pointing out the inconsistency. Stephen A. Smith in particular, and we'll get to him in the next section, couldn't believe Orlovsky was doubling down. To Stephen A.,
so what you're saying
turnovers
is,
are
if
non-negotiable.
you take away everything
You can't
bad,
spin
then
them away.
Dillon Gabriel was
But Orlovsky's
impressive.
comments
come
didn't
on,
just
man. And
spark
guess what?
arguments.
The last 3 tweets this
They
guy
raised
put
a
out
bigger
about
question.
Shedeur were jokes from
Does
when he fell in the
ESPN
draft in
push
April.
certain
people in
narratives
the media
about
and in
quarterbacks
the community in
regardless
general
of what
have decided
actually
that they
happens
hate
on the
Shadeur
field?
Sanders just because
Because
of his
Orlovsky
father and his
didn't just
attitude in
say
college,
Gabriel
which
had
could
potential.
be considered fair because I myself was a critic of Shadeur Sanders and his father for tanking his draft stock all the way to the 5th round. But that isn't to say that this kid doesn't have talent, and it's my job to bring all of this information to your attention. So now the Browns officially released their depth chart, and it's absolutely wild. Joe Flacco's QB1, Kenny Pickett is listed as QB2 despite being injured for over 3 weeks. Dillon Gabriel sits at QB3 after that disastrous Eagles performance, and Shedeur Sanders, the guy who literally broke preseason viewership records with his 2-touchdown debut, is sitting at QB4, 4th string. The fan reaction has been absolutely nuclear. Social media exploded with people demanding that the Browns trade Shedeur Sanders to